Hello, everyone, and welcome to RMD, All Things Aesthetics and Wellness podcast with me, your host, Dr. Deborah Durst. And I am, again, an ER physician turned anti-aging regenerative medicine. And the reason for that is because as I started to notice changes as I was aging and doing greater than 25 years in the ER, that, there were just more solutions in traditional medicine to help with looking and feeling and functioning better. And so as I transitioned into anti-aging medicine, I realized there's lots of solutions, and my mission with launching Revitalize MD was to bring those solutions to patients comprehensively to look, feel, and function better. And so with the podcast, hopefully we can get that message out to more people and actually even, inform you about products and services that you might not know anything about. So today I have two guests with me. Well, Matt is here in the studio, and so he is going to be here to interact and ask questions. And then I have Dr. James Kelley with ProLon and L-Nutra with me. So I'm going to have Matt introduce himself first, and then we'll go to Dr. Kelley.
Hi. I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me. So this is a first, but so Matt Ferris, I work for Lutronic. So we're an aesthetics, medical-based, light-based manufacturer. So all things skin, you name it, we can do it. Good.
All right. Well, perfect. And then Dr. Kelley, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being on.
I'm excited about this. And your career goals and your purpose for existing line very closely with what I do. So I'm Dr. James Kelley, medical science liaison for L-Nutra. We make ProLon, the world's first and only fasting mimicking diet, which we'll talk extensively about today. But just by way of background, I am an MD MBA with a focus in sports medicine, and since then tailored more towards nutrition and longevity. Briefly worked with a couple of different startups that I helped found, and then came on board a joint venture with the Cleveland Clinic Innovation Group, helping bring new medical technology to market to try to help do exactly what you're doing, which is give more solutions to clinicians to help support a longer, healthier life. And then eventually, Dr. Walter Longo, our founder, and I had gotten to know each other during my MBA, and he brought me on board to help launch L-Nutra. And I've since transitioned into the clinical education role for the last several years. So been here since the very beginning, and I'm very excited to talk about it today. So thanks for having me.
Well, thank you very much for being on. So again, I have listened to Dr. Longo talk a couple times actually at A4M, and that's how I learned about ProLon and the fasting mimicking diet. And so why don't you tell us a little bit about what that is?
For those of you who don't know, Dr. Walter Longo is one of the world's leading longevity researchers. He's the director of the Longevity Institute at the Leonard Davis School of Anti-Aging Medicine at the University of Southern California. He's also got a professorship in Italy. And his whole career has been focused around longevity and how we age, how to maximize what they call health span, which is basically like, yes, our goal is to make you live longer, but if you feel like trash for the last 40 years, is that really much of a life? Instead, let's focus on maximizing the quality of the years so that even if we do get you to live a little bit longer, maybe not to 115, although our goal is to get people as long as possible, we want you to feel great, like we want you to feel 60 when you're 90. So if that's the case, then we're all going to have a great life. So that was his career focus, looked at a lot of different cultures across time and how they age and how their diet impacts that and how many other things. And we can talk about that a bit as we go because it gets into the weeds a little bit of biochem. But one of the discoveries was that it's possible to get many of the benefits at a cellular level. When you go into a fasting state, a lot of great stuff happens. And we'll talk about that here in a sec too, I'm sure. But it's possible to mimic the effects of a fast in many ways, tricking the body into going into basically the fasting rejuvenative state while still providing a certain amount of nutrition in the form of plant-based Mediterranean style diet where we give you breakfast, lunch, dinner, soups, drinks, snacks, desserts, etc., but still keep those cells in sort of a fasting state and give you many of the same metabolic benefits you would get from a 5-day fast. So ProLon itself is real food designed to help bring you many of the benefits of a fast while helping you get through those 5 days while supporting things like lean body mass. So
helping us survive a fast. No, but that's a big issue because a lot of patients do not want to fast and it's uncomfortable for them. And so that was one of my big I was intrigued by the diet because you can have, so basically it is set up, and I do want to get back to Dr. Longo for a few minutes after that because his research went way back. But so as far as the fasting, it's set up for a 5-day right now. And so again, you're able to have food, but that food is set up to make the body think it's fasting, but not all the pain involved in fasting.
That's the goal. So the reason why, because this is the problem that a lot of people have is threefold. One, why do I want to fast? Two, why do I need to fast for several days in a row without any break? And three, how are you mimicking that with food? So so if you don't mind, I'll go on my little spiel. So
Yes.
A minute or two of my dulcet tone. So
absolutely.
The way that it works is, so fasting is a threat to the body. And like any threat, the body has to evolve to react to that threat to maximize our chances of survival. So as we evolved, we developed ways to respond when you take away our energy. So if we have no access to food for a certain amount of time, the body recognizes that and does something quite a bit different than what it would do if you have continuous energy. And it takes actually about 24 hours to really even start the process at a cellular level of cleaning yourself up. So your body has a built-in mechanism for recognizing the absence of food pretty quickly, but it takes a day or two to really get into the state where the cells start cleaning themselves up, called autophagy or autophagy, which is literally self-eating in Latin. Autophagy, self-eating. So it's the process that your cells inside them, intracellularly, they clean up their old worn-out components. The mitochondria, for example, the energy, the batteries of the cell that provide all of your energy as a human, those will clean themselves up or repair them or delete themselves and rebuild entirely. Old, worn out, misfolded proteins go away. It's a vital process in how your body cleans itself up during infections, inflammation, etc. It's a restorative, regenerative, intracellular regeneration of organelles. So it's a total body rejuvenation that really only triggers itself starting at about 24 hours into a fast and peaking around 48 to 72 hours. And that's with a water only fast. So you need to be in a fasting state for 3 days to reach the peak and then another day or two to let it trail off. So it takes several days in a row. And if you eat at any point during that process regular food, you will immediately kick yourself out. You'll stop all of that and you'll start all over. So why 5 days? Because it takes a while to get into that. There's other metabolic benefits that also take a couple days. So if you're somebody who practices intermittent fasting, we think that's great. That's a great thing to do. There are some benefits. There's a lot of weight loss associated with that. In many cases, it's sustainable, helps you with metabolic flexibility, but it's not going to get you into that deep total body rejuvenation that you would get through prolonged fasting. The challenge with prolonged fasting, though, is twofold. One, you try to do it. If anybody's tried, bless you, I can't go more than about 24 hours. The vast majority.
I'm with you.
Yeah, it's like 90 to 95% drop out by day 2. It's just really hard to do. So you can't even get into that cleanup state. Stay there for long enough. The other problem is that the body does a couple things when it goes into a fasting state early on that aren't necessarily great for you. One, you are going to cannibalize a lot of lean body mass, a lot of muscle tissue, because your muscles are filled with energy, and it takes a while for ketosis to really ramp up. That takes about 2 to 3 days for some people. If you've done it a lot, you can get into it quicker. But in the interim, when you run out of sugar from your last meal and ketosis fully ramps up, your body's going to eat glycerin, glycogen, and amino acids in your liver and your muscles. You actually lose quite a bit of lean body mass. The other challenge is you're not bringing in any food. So food actually has about 40% of your water. So if you don't eat food, you're going to get a little bit dehydrated. You're at a high risk of that anyway. And you're not moving the bile in your gallbladder because you're not eating any fat. So while it does peristalse a little bit and you won't necessarily get a gallstone, things like gallstones are at an increased risk, increased dehydration and lightheadedness, that you're going to be very hungry and you're going to lose that muscle mass. So all of those are reasons why prolonged fasting with just water isn't necessarily a great idea. There's also the challenge that many of us have underlying health conditions. So I should put that caveat up front. If you are thinking about doing a fast for any prolonged time beyond about 24 hours, consult with your healthcare professional. Even 24 hours for most people, probably want to be careful, especially if you have underlying medical conditions or prescription medications. You don't want to do that without clinical supervision.
Yeah, and I was actually wondering if it was, something that everyone should do, because, it does have even added benefits for, adjuncts to other treatments, even chemotherapy, as an adjunct to assisting that working better. So Do you feel like it is safe for everyone, or what is the recommendation for that?
So we as a company take a very conservative, very careful approach that if we don't have evidence, we don't recommend it. So one of the things that we see with a lot of people is that and if you're not used to fasting, you want to be careful. That's the first part.
Mm-hmm.
I do think under the right circumstances, a huge majority of us are going to benefit from it. One of the reasons we exist is to try to help make it easier. We don't have large enough trials that we're going to claim safety for medications or any medical disease. But the idea behind ProLon, and I'll just tell everybody at home what it is and how it works, but it's supposed to make things easier. We want to make sure that you are healthy and safe. So until we have large trials that demonstrate very clearly that whatever particular condition you have may benefit, we want to be careful. We're doing a lot of research around medical disease. We have a lot of published articles already, but none of them reach the threshold that we need to get to make sure we know. They're all what I would consider to be more pilot studies. We generally claim around weight loss, healthy aging, and metabolic balance. That's sort of where we limit it. So if a clinician wants to use our product in somebody who has an underlying condition, they can do so as long as they feel that person's healthy enough. But again, if you have an underlying health condition, we do not recommend that you attempt a prolonged fast without medical supervision by somebody who understands you and understands fasting. I think it's really important because it is a dangerous, it is a stress for the body. So when we know that there's a lot of articles out there, and some by us, some by our founder, Dr. Longo, with really exciting possibilities, but until we do the homework and fully vet it out, we want to be careful. So,
well, and I think that's one of the things I love about your company and even ProLon and Dr. Longo is that it is all science-based. And so the studies do support, what it supports the product, but also you guys look for science and studies to support, again, those recommendations, which I love.
That's how we got here. So can I scale everyone with the tale of how is this created? So
yeah, absolutely.
So Dr. Longo was looking at the longest living people on Earth, and if you read about the blue zones, you may have heard of them. So these are places like Okinawa, Japan, Sardinia, Italy, Nicoya, Costa Rica, where the highest concentration of people living over 100 and still being active in the world. And look at kind of why they did that, how they were living, what they were doing differently than the rest of us. And they all do kind of the same thing, Mediterranean style, low animal protein, high plant-based diet. They have low stress jobs. They're only active for 15, 20 hours a week of their job. The rest of the time they spend in community. They eat as a family. They spend a lot of time with friends, and they're active into their later years. But then there's one group in Ecuador that doesn't do any of that and still has a very, very low incidence of age-related disease. Like they're essentially immune to cancer, diabetes, and heart disease. And if you look at them, and if you've heard of the Laron, they're very LARON, for those of you who want to look at them up at home. They're about 3 feet tall, though. So if you look at their DNA, so here's how we work. So the body recognizes food through a couple nutrient sensing pathways. They're basically hormone alarms. When you eat protein, sugar, or carbs, these hormones get sending out signals saying, hey, food is here, it's time to grow. One of them, called IGF-1, or insulin-like growth factor 1, responds primarily to protein. And it's the reason why bodybuilders eat protein. They may not know that's why they're eating it, but when you eat protein, you release IGF-1, which triggers growth and the laydown of new protein. But it also lays down other things. You get growth of everything, not just muscle. So once you're done growing up, you just start growing out. So if you eat more protein, you grow everything, including fat, cholesterol, etc. And you're also increasing the way your cells divide. You're increasing your metabolic rate. You're increasing metabolic damage. So all of those things build up over time. And if you don't push the cleanup button, there's no reason to clean them up. If you have plenty of fuel coming in, which Americans, newsflash, we eat too much.
And too often.
We live in a constant growth state. We never push that cleanup button. So part of the reason we're here is to try to help shift that curve back, raise that awareness. But the way we figured it out was the Laron. Their IGF-1 is mutated, so they don't respond to protein. So they don't grow, so they stay about 3 feet tall. But they also don't get these age-related diseases, which it turns out now we know may actually be growth-related diseases. And growth may in fact be a key component of aging. So while it is important to grow, growth has a lot of benefits to it, and high IGF-1 can feel good for a lot of people, but it's a double-edged sword. You have to undo some of that damage. Ideally, the longer living populations have lower IGF-1. The Laron have basically no IGF-1. and they don't get the issue. And since IGF-1 is a protein-mediated pathway, meaning if you eat protein, you ramp up IGF-1, we now know directly from the neuron that food impacts how we grow and age. And that's sort of the aha moment of where we then spent the next 20 years and basically at this point about $50 million of research is figuring out how do we take the benefits of what we learned about them and IGF-1 without making you 3 feet tall and while still making it doable.
Without the disadvantage. And that's just one genetic mutation that they had, that just their body doesn't recognize IGF-1. So essentially we're getting to the point where protein now is a key component to aging, right?
Yep.
Is that, because it's actually kind of goes against a lot of what I, frequently would recommend, which was kind of intermittent fasting and more ketogenic or, healthy fats and proteins. But this is a different mindset.
Well, it actually finds up pretty nicely. It is a modified low protein keto diet. Essentially, you will go into mild to moderate ketosis in our 5-day fasting mimicking diet, but and we do think there are a lot of alignments there. The tough part is people do feel better in a lot of cases when they do high protein diets. They also feel a lot better when they do 5 days of fasting mimicking diet. Most people report at the end, we took surveys of thousands of our customers, much easier to adopt a healthy lifestyle. At the end of it, their energy levels are higher, brain fog, mental clarity, and focus go up. Brain fog goes down, mental clarity and focus go up. Their cravings are somewhat reset, so they are less interested in sugar and carbs. Again, like it's so if you're looking to kickstart, especially in these COVID quarantine times, falling off your routine and you need a good kickstart. I'm actually starting this week again.
I'm actually doing it next week. Yes.
Good for you. Yeah. So we could all use a little bit of a mental reset. And this is very much that for me, especially, I can tell you personally, it's one of the main reasons I'm still here years into this, other than the fact that I love the mission, which is we're trying to give people more tools to help improve their health span and make them live a longer, healthier life. That's our mission here at L-Nutra. ProLon is a tool for general wellness purposes, but I love that we're developing that stuff. But more than anything, I just love how it makes me feel. There are people love the weight loss. That's something that one of the main reasons people tend to do this is you're going to lose a very significant amount of weight in a very quick period of time, specifically targeted visceral fat around the midsection. Most of the weight you will lose is visceral fat. The first time you lose it, you're going to gain a little bit back over the next month. The second time you do it, you're going to gain less back. And the third time is really when the body learns. It's like going to the gym. You have to get in shape for it to work. So it's not a magic bullet that you fire once and never have to do again. You do have to train yourself, get in fasting shape. And then after that, you can relax and just do maintenance of once every 3 to 6 months. For most people, if you still have metabolic or weight loss goals, you may want to do it more frequently, again, under clinical supervision. But more than anything.
Did you say once a month? Did you?
Well, so we have a couple different protocols, and we have a new one coming out for that we're going to help people with health coaching as well. But so our general protocol is if you have a metabolic or weight loss goal, 3 to 4 months in a row, meaning once a month for 3 to 4 months. And then beyond that, if you've reached your goal, you may be able to dial it back to once every 3 to 6 months. Our clinical trials are on 3 or 4 months consecutively. So going forward after that, it's just sort of how you and your clinician feel you're doing. But prior to that, 3 or 4 months in a row for most people, as long as you have adequate body mass and no other contraindication, seems to be the right kind of training regimen to get your body where you get it and to get those results to last. Again, like just looking at weight loss, for example, in our trials, if they did it once, they lose about 5 pounds the first time they do it. They regain about half of that over the next month for most people. Some continued to lose it. In our clinical trial, it didn't change their diet or exercise between or after cycles. So it was just based on the 15 days of ProLon for the 3 cycles. So 5 days on and then 25 days of regular life, they lost about 5 pounds, but they regained about half of it over the first month. The second time they regained less. And by the third time, they still had 2/3 of their weight loss 4 months later without any other lifestyle changes. So if they regained half of it in a month the first time, but they only regained 1/3 of it in 4 months the next time, something changed. So internally, this appears to switch something in your either basal metabolic rate or metabolic flexibility. We're not sure exactly what it is, but the results are cumulative and they tend to last a lot longer. So I highly encourage everybody. This isn't something you want, although if you do it once, you'll feel, most people feel great afterwards and they get a lot of benefits. So if you only end up doing it once, that's still great, but you're going to get a lasting change if you do it more than that. And to that end, we introduced a longevity program that includes It includes 12 different coaching sessions, multiple emails. You have access to an online portal with a lot of supportive information. This is only available through clinicians, but you do 4 cycles of the diet coupled with nutrition counseling before, during, and after each cycle. And it's not just nutrition, it's lifestyle, nutrition, health coaches certified in the Johns Hopkins patient engagement method. So very, very highly trained, very skilled to help support you to get through this. Because even though it's just 5 days and you can do anything for 5 days, building a lasting change takes a couple months. And this helps carry you through it so you don't have to do all the work yourself.
So that's something new. I didn't know about this.
Yeah,
so
we just are launching it literally this month. So it's brand new. So
and so if
I
they do,
I'm supposed to talk about it. Was I not supposed to talk about that?
No, it's good. I mean, there's a lot to talk about, period, because you can go on for a long period of time with this.
Yeah, I haven't even talked about how we mimic fasting with food. I apologize. I haven't really gotten to that.
Well, and then I was thinking about not only do you talked about, again, brain clarity, energy, decreased fat, visceral fat, it helps with blood sugar control and, diabetes or even insulin resistance, improvement, cholesterol, so all kinds of stuff. Well, yeah.
We're doing studies on that. We need a lot more data before we make any fasting blood glucose. It's a pretty big, we're excited about that. We have a year-long trial that's almost completed that will give us some info that will hopefully be able to make more influential statements. But at the moment, we know we help you maintain healthy levels of systolic blood pressure, IGF-1. You maintain your lean body mass, which is a key difference with water fasting. We know that we help support that muscle tissue to the great majority while you're doing fasting. Most people get through the diet just fine. There are some things that people may experience. So they may get, in many cases, when you do any type of prolonged fasting, it's very common to get a headache the first time you do it, especially. About 40% of people are going to get a mild headache. It's just from going into ketosis, going into starvation, weaning off of glucose. If you're a big caffeine drinker, you want to wean down ahead of time. You can have 1 cup of coffee per day on the diet, but no more than that, because it can interact with how we mimic fasting. So, which actually, if I may, just for a moment, how you mimic fasting with food. We learned about what IGF-1 does. Turns out it's not a light switch. It's not on or off. It's kind of a gradation. And if you get below a certain level, you trigger your cells to go into the same state they would in a fast. So, but you don't have to go all the way down to 0. You just have to get to a certain level. And what Dr. Longo and his team figured out was where that level is for IGF-1. They also figured it out for the other growth pathways. So if I drop protein very, very low for 5 days, about 10% of an 800-calorie diet is plant-based protein. So if I use animal protein, it strongly reactivates IGF-1. But I can get away with about 10% plant-based protein, and then I can give you about 45% sugar and carbs and 45% healthy fats over those 5 days. That's part of the story. How much and what ratio. The next part is how we put it together. So, for example, the nut bar that we give you for breakfast in the morning has macadamia and honey. It has about 8 grams of honey. But if I gave you 8 grams of honey, it would take you right out of the fat. If I give it to you with a significant amount of healthy nut oils from macadamia and coconut, and with a significant amount of plant-based fibers, I can reduce the glycemic load and index down below a level that triggers these growth pathways, and I can, with the low protein, suppress IGF-1, and you add those all together, and it keeps your cells in a fasting state, which is much, so it's very, very technically designed macro and micronutrient ratios. You could, if you're a food scientist and you want to spend all day in the kitchen, you might be able to recreate it, but it's part of the reason it's so unbelievably time consuming to make this over the last several decades is because it's really hard to do. So we've already done it for you, laid it out all for you. The food is pretty tasty. We have several different varieties, and it'll give you all the clinical results if you follow our clinical protocol, at least for most people. So we like to think that we've done it in the easiest way possible to get through 5 days of fasting while still enjoying it, supporting your lean body mass, and letting your body do what you find to do.
Well, I think that it's definitely laid out nicely. So it does come in boxes where it's day 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's laid out. I think it'd be very hard to do. And a lot of patients don't want to, put all that thought into it. They want it laid out for them. It is very tasty. I will say that. But they also have to follow timing specifically then as well.
Well,
with each part of it.
So each day we give you a meal card that suggests how to eat it, but ultimately it's designed that you could eat it any way you like. You can eat them whole foods in any order. You can eat them throughout the whole 24 hours. You can cram them all into 4 or 6 hours. However you eat, you should still get the same results. The only part you can't do is bring food from one day into another day. Each day has to be done discreetly. But you can kind of do it however you like. And generally speaking, everybody does extremely well. most people follow a traditional eating style of breakfast, lunch, and dinner during the diet, but it's up to you. So.
Well, then it sounds like, for me, I would recommend it like a quarterly reset for people, not even the 3 or 4 months. And then in between, they would go back to, their own eating habits. So I love the fact that you guys have a program that can follow them before and after, and then recommend nutritional, guidelines or directions, right?
Yeah, all kinds of resources. And the nice part too is that we can work with the practitioner and figure out exactly what you want to do. We can help reinforce that. We can provide them whatever art. We have a lot of supporting material, but we just want to make sure we tailor the experience to whatever their personal goals are as defined by you and them as a team. So a lot of what we do is emotional and behavioral support. And there are a lot of good research articles around 12 weeks of coaching leads to a lasting change. So the program is 4 months long because that leads to a longitudinal, and you can make it longer too. So it doesn't have to end in 4 months. So if you find that you're having success with us, whatever works for you, we want to work with that. I personally use it once every 3 to 6 months just as a general behavioral mental reset because I'm an Ohioan, as you know, and Ohio is big on red meat and carbs. So I have had to work pretty extensively throughout my life now that I know that those aren't necessarily good for me. They have their place, and by no means are we telling anybody that they can't do that. But you do need to clean yourself up if you're going to be doing that. So for me, it's a good detox mentally from wanting to eat those foods. It's also a nice biological sort of rejuvenation for me as a person. I'm really due for another one now. It's been a couple months of misbehaving around the holidays, so I'm ready for the
Everybody needs a reset after the holidays, and even COVID's been very difficult for people. And I think what's interesting is because, again, I always went with the healthy fats and proteins, but honestly, as I listened to him more, even the first time I heard him talk, it's really the longevity part that we're talking about. So it's not so much that you feel better or you lose weight, but if you want to live longer and healthier, then that's where plant-based is better. At least, the animal fat is not the studies don't support animal fat in longevity. Is that correct?
It tends to say that animal protein is the most strong regulator, and studies are building up. And as much as I know that a lot of people out there are really emotionally drawn towards red meat, the studies are pretty compelling that it's probably not the best thing to eat in anything other than moderation. So we do need to probably lower it. In America, we eat way too much protein in general. And if there are some people who are going to need to eat more protein, if you want to sustain a huge muscle mass, you probably need a little bit higher protein. So it all depends on your personal goals, but the research seems to indicate if you want to live the longest, healthiest life possible, you have to limit the protein. And you have to do it fairly early in life. You may still be able to get benefits from things like 5 days of fasting to clean things up. That may shift the curve. But if you just for your whole life eat a cleaner, more Mediterranean style, lower animal protein diet, you're just going to slow that growth curve and slow the impact it has on your future. So it makes a lot of sense that it all adds together. What the effect of 5 days of fasting periodically throughout the year does in the long term, we still have to figure out if that gives you the same benefit as if you've been eating a Mediterranean diet your whole life, low animal protein. But we are hopeful, especially in animal models, with some indicators that may be something we're going to be looking at. But so there's a lot we have left to learn, and we'll be the first to admit that. And the nice thing I like about this company is, as you mentioned, we're so dedicated to the science that if it doesn't support, we're not going to say it. So then that's the nice part about working here is I can really put my heart behind what we're saying because I believe it. So
and his book is awesome too, The Longevity Diet. For those on a video, that would be this book, but it's and it goes into a lot of the other stuff. And so I don't know if I'm very intrigued by the program part. Now, is that something that I set up for our patients, or is that something they do individually?
So you would work with your account executive. I think Melanie's yours. She's absolutely wonderful. We would work to get people enrolled in that. And the digital back end side, we'll be teaching guys more about it very, very shortly. But it's seamless. Eventually, they will have a portal they can access with all of their resources for before, during, and after. The health coaching is automatically set up. They get emails and texts to sign up for those. We tailor the experience. But you'll be learning more about that, and all of your clients will have access to that as well. So certainly something we're only exclusively available through healthcare practice. So not something you can get from our website.
And then I know that you guys even have like soups or, again, the bars now. Is that like something that they could just healthily eat when they're not doing the 5 day fast? Good kind of snack.
So what you're mentioning, the fast bar. So the fast bar is based on the L bar, which is the breakfast bar or whenever you choose to eat it, the snack bar during the 5 days. The fast bar is a scaled down version of that for consumption whenever you feel like you want a healthy snack, or it's specifically designed to help you extend a fast. So if you wanted to take a 12 or 15 hour fast and turn it into a longer one, but still get to eat, this has been shown. We just completed a clinical trial and submitted for publication. Should be out fairly shortly. A pretty cool study down in Texas of 100 plus patients documenting that after a 15-hour water-only fast, you could have this and have essentially the same impact on blood markers as continuing your water fast. So it's shown to help extend that fast. Now, how you choose to use that is up to you. It's also a great healthy snack. It's got a good amount of healthy plant-based fats that are going to help you feel more satiated. So may make you less hungry while still extending that fast and giving you a little bit of energy because it still has some glucose in the honey, just done a particular way where it's not going to bombard your system. They can be used for healthy snacks, can be used to extend your fast. And you'll see the research papers are pretty cool coming out too, that basically it is stealth food. So that part's fun.
So basically, the research paper shows that you can still have that and it's still part of a fast. Because I don't know if the studies actually support like our intermittent fast, if we're doing like a 15 or 18 hour fast, and only eating during like, say, an 8 hour period. Say you're doing a 16 hour intermittent fast per day and eating for an 8 hour period, caloric restriction. And then again, that fasting is great for longevity. And so does that kind of support, you can use this during that 16 hour, these bars?
So the goal is you could eat it at 12 hours and still technically be in a fast till 16 hours. So basically let you have breakfast, but it's not a true meal replacement. It doesn't meet the requirements of a meal replacement. We're not trying to replace a meal. We're trying to help extend your fast while giving you something that makes it a little bit easier to do that.
You're trying to make it less painful, the 16 hour less painful. All right.
And I think it's really important because especially as people get a little more savvy and they start doing things like wearing continuous glucose monitors on their own and just seeing that fasting is not the same as ketosis. So even though this in many people will have a ketogenic effect, it will lower blood or you won't see the same spikes you would from a more sugary or a differently designed bar. It's not designed to keep your blood sugar in ketones at a certain level. It's designed to keep your cells in a fasting state, and that's regulated through a different pathway. Now, most people will see a lot of overlap there, and they should. But so just so everybody knows, if you're noticing spikes in certain things, that's okay. We did clinical trials to validate that it doesn't. We're not trying to not give you any sugar. We're trying to help support you while keeping your cells in a clean. So that's a really important concept. A lot of people don't quite grasp because it is really heavy biochem, but ketosis is not the same thing as fasting. They happen together. If you do a water fast, you will be in ketosis, but they're unrelated. They just happen at the same time. So the ketosis is the way your body's trying to power itself. The cleanup is what it's doing because it's out of energy. They just happen to occur at the same time. So our goal is to give you a little bit of ketosis. You're going to burn a lot of visceral fat during this, but it's also to help get you through that cellular cleanup. That's our main goal, is the metabolic and cellular benefits.
So when we're fasting and that cell is in a fasted state, it's the metabolic benefits of, what the cell goes through to clean up. And is there increased mitochondrial production, or is there anything that supports that during this 5-day fast or, recurrent 5-day fast?
So one of that ongoing research, we haven't, in our large clinical trials, we haven't done biopsies on our patients. So it's, while there may be some animal models to support that, we want to make sure that we don't get out of our lane. We're looking at a lot of things like stem cells and mitochondrial regeneration, things like that. But until we get a little more robust human data, and it's tough because there aren't a lot of outpatient lab tests for that, really the only way to do it is biopsy. So at the moment, there are bioaging. We are looking at bioaging scores, which will show mitochondrial activity and things like that. They have yet to be validated on a really large level. So more to come, I guess, is the short answer. Sorry.
Okay. Well, and so the science, again, that's one of the reasons why I love, his work and ProLon. And how does L-Nutra, is that just the company that's now producing ProLon so that people don't get that confused?
We want to let Dr. Longo continue his research unbiased. So what they did was they formed a company that all of Dr. Longo, he has a controlling interest in the company. All the shares are pledged to a foundation that does fund research. So he'll never see a dime from this. Research will be funded to help advance the cause of this. L-Nutra is the entity that licensed the patents from Dr. Longo and USC to commercialize stuff so we can do a business venture without it affecting his ability to do unbiased research.
Okay,
So
gotcha.
he wanted to maintain his integrity as a longevity researcher and know that people are not profiting off of it.
Okay. And then his book specifically is Longevity Diet with lots of great information in it. And then L-Nutra sells ProLon. And if they're looking for the fasting mimicking diet, you're looking for ProLon FMD, and then now this cool little program that we can set up in addition to that, which I love. So you'll probably be sorry you brought that up so soon with us.
No, I'm thrilled. I'm excited about it. I've worked my tail off on it. I know a lot of our reps are really, really working hard to get it out there. We're refining it as we go along, but it's really robust offering that's actually going to drive our support to the next level, help you be more successful on the diet. If you do this at home, you'll have people there to help you through it, get you ready, let you know what to expect, and then while you're on it, they can check in with you, see how things are going. So it just is a really much better offering in terms of how people go through it and the amount of nutrition and amount of knowledge and all of the things that are accessible to you during it. So if you're really looking to nerd out, you can go deep down the rabbit hole. If you want to just sit back and let the benefits come to you, we can do that too and bring them to you. Even when you're not during the 5 days, we still show up and give you the info you need to be successful. So depending on however you want to engage in it, we just want to make sure everyone's as successful as possible.
Well, I love the fact that you clarified again the ketosis, more of like an energy production and where you're getting it from, so versus fasting, which is more of a cleanup, because it brings us to the mitochondria, which you really, there's not, at least I've read a lot of that even just with intermittent fasting. So, and then the stem cell and telomeres, is there anything that we do have that we can mention about those benefits with the FMD?
A lot of our papers talk about that. The problem is, in order to make a longevity claim, you got to do a long study. And since humans live a very long time, in order to show that this makes you live longer, we'd have to wait 100 years to launch the product. So we have a lot of animal studies that show a lot of great benefits around that. We are doing preliminary research. We've done a little bit. You can see things like Gwyneth Paltrow on Goop. They did on Netflix. She did an episode on us. On her 4th episode is about healthy aging. And she did one cycle and then did a telomere test. And she had I think she lost like 1.5 years in 5 days. So she got 1.5 years younger on telomeres. Now, again, because we haven't done 100-year trials, longer telomeres don't necessarily correlate with longer life yet. We just don't know. So younger cells have longer telomeres. For those of you who are wondering what they are, just the number of copies they can make of themselves. Every time they copy, they get short. And younger cells have a lot longer telomeres, older ones have shorter ones. And every time we do those tests, we do see them get longer. So that's good evidence that something's going on internally. We just need to do, again, much larger trials for me to make any statements around that. Same with stem cells. These are all, people sort of think because they've heard the terms, they don't understand how complex the science is. It's super hard to measure things like autophagy because it's happening inside your cells, which are microscopic to begin with. And then microscopic things within microscopic things is what we're trying to measure. And since it stays inside the cell, it's not wandering around your bloodstream. So I can't measure it. I can't say, autophagy. There are things called autophagy-based end products, which is what we measured in our clinical trial. They're just really hard to do. So we're getting, science is coming. But what we do know is from our clinical trials that the metabolic benefits are tremendous in just 5 days, multiple cycles of 5 days with long-lasting, better benefits. We're adding to that. I think we have many, many more published clinical trials coming out this year, publishing, that will help support that and give us a little bit more to say. So we appreciate everyone's patience. We're just going to make sure we back it up first.
Well, I mean, he's a scientist and he loves studies. He didn't pick an easy one as far as longevity then, because it's really hard to measure 100-year studies and still be alive to do it or have the brain power to do it. So he didn't choose an easy topic to study, right? But you're doing a lot of it based on, or even he got started, a lot of it was based on other, populations that had longevity then and kind of looking at what caused that. And then that's kind of where he started. But he's been doing this since the 90s or even before that.
The biosphere is involved in the biosphere too. For if anyone's seen that delightful Pauly Shore movie, Biodome, based on the Biosphere 2 project with they put a bunch of astronauts and scientists in the desert in an enclosure for 2 years in Arizona and saw basically, could we make a colony on Mars or something like that? That was the goal, to see if we could create a self-sustaining ecosystem. And there was a lot of information that came out on that because they were all in a pretty big caloric deficit for the 2 years. And when they emerged, they had some really interesting biomarkers that was another clue, and Dr. Longo's mentor. He talks about this in the book. He'll go through all of kind of how we got here. So that's the fascinating part, is how the story is built of over decades of observation and clinical trials and just meta-analysis of thousands of existing people and other studies to build all of the science behind how we age and how you can shift that curve. Because ultimately that's what our goal is looking at all of what they call the modifiable risk factors, all the things that go into aging that you can change. You can't change when you were born. You can't change how long you've been here chronologically, but biologically you can impact how your cells age. And that's part of what we're here to do. We just are always going to be continuing the research to show that we are doing exactly what we're saying we're doing.
So it sounds, again, from a cleanup is like the big thing, that if people were to simplistically take things away, again, if they go into, a ketogenic diet and they're in ketosis, that's just what they're burning for energy. And then that's how they're losing weight. They're not cleaning up anything, where this is, a cleanup of the cell and the system, which obviously is beneficial, for healthy living. And again, for me, thinking about it from more of a plant-based is just different than I had really been, kind of directing patients more towards a ketogenic intermittent fast for simplicity until I learned more about, ProLon.
Well, I mean, in intermittent fasting, again, Dr. Longo is an advocate of that. He thinks everyone should be doing an intermittent fast every day. He's a fan of a 12. He basically does 2 12-hour fasts. He does a 12-12 where he'll eat breakfast and dinner and fast between and fast afterwards. So he's pretty intense about it. But he thinks everyone should be doing some form of intermittent fasting, probably the way we were designed. So there's no harm in that. And, ketogenic has its benefits. The question is, there are some mounting studies that show you shouldn't be in ketosis all the time, but it does have its benefits. And again, that's part of what we do. So I think you're right on. And again, we're not zero animals. If you're going to eat animal protein, just try to limit it, especially red meat, fish and shellfish are probably low mercury if you can get them. So we actually also founded another company called the Nutrition for Longevity. So N4L is what we call it around here, but literally nutritionforlongevity.com is based on all of his research around the longevity diet. And they will provide 3 days of ready-made meals, sort of like Blue Apron or something like that, where they'll farm to table to you within about 24 to 48 hours of almost every item in the thing being harvested. Or you can get it with salmon or other fish, or you can do a vegan version, 2 different calorie sizes, different size people and different metabolic rates. So we do that as well to help add to the story. So you can have the fast bars for your intermittent fasting snack to help extend your fast. You can have Nutrition for Longevity to show you what you should be eating in general, what you think you should be eating when you're not on ProLon, and then ProLon for 5 days of cellular rejuvenation and mental reset every so often. So we've tried to be the full solution for how we think people should eat if they want to maximize their health span. So that's our whole mission around here is healthiest at 100 kind of. That's sort of our placement.
Still healthy and active. And so eventually maybe some food prep ordering. Is that on there's probably a company that would take over for what we think, people should be on and recommended, where they can actually just call order and get that delivered.
That's what we do. That's what Nutrition for Longevity does right now.
Okay. All right. I thought that was what it was at first and then missed the second part. So, all right. So they're doing that right now. Yeah. I think that's a great idea, because that's really what people want is, ease of making this healthy and easy at the same time, because they don't want to work hard for it. They want it simple.
Ancient grains. It's pesticide free. They use physical barrier. We have a very, very clean farm. We have 2 different farms. We're making a third one. We actually literally bought the farm. So we made our own farms to do this, just because we know what we think. We want to try to put our money where the mouth is. So literally. So.
All right. I love it. And then what about supplements? Are there I have not really ever seen supplemental recommendations. Really we're using food as nutrition for this part.
Well, I mean, ideally you get your nutrition from your food, but some people do require some supplementation. We actually do include supplements in ProLon for NR1 and algal oil. So we have a little plant-based supplement with vitamins, minerals, electrolytes that we think are enough to get you through the diet. And then we have a algal oil, which is a plant-based omega-3 that we provide during the diet. So in general, most people, there are some supplements that certain people do well with, and we're doing a lot more research around immune health, Our team has done a ton of literature review over the last month alone in that area. So more to come on whether we carry additional supplements or recommend any. During the diet, we recommend people discontinue all supplements except for if you feel they should continue something like a thyroid support. That's up to you. Generally, just to minimize interaction with the diet and how we work and how we suppress those nutrient-sensitive pathways and trick your body into going into a fast. But some supplements are probably okay. But in going forward in the long run, vitamins, minerals, and electrolytes, if you can get them in your diet, great. If you need to supplement beyond that, that's understandable too. We want to make sure everyone maintains their healthy levels.
And then all meds, people stay on their meds. They're obviously under a doctor's care if they have medical conditions before they do this. That's the
meds we worry about. We haven't tested this with any of them. We want people to be very careful with anything that modifies your blood sugar because our diet, while it still has glucose, is not as much as normal people have. So we want to make sure you're not in trouble there. So if you're going with your clinician on this, you want to make sure you review the meds and that any changes that need to be made or monitoring you, that's all done. There are a lot of things that we don't know yet about this diet. But again, under supervision, people seem to do extremely well. So the good news is tons of data. We have over 250,000 people have done this already and done extremely well under supervision when necessary. Mm-hmm. So we know enough. But if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. We have a great team here, and we're pretty quick about getting back with answers as best we can.
And then I think one other question that patients might ask frequently, because detox. So we talked about, ketogenic and how that differs from this, but a lot of people, and again, the professional lines will have a detox that, that patients can go through. How would that differ from obviously we are detoxing if, we're cleaning up the cell and, so that is part of it, but how would we explain that to patients if they come in wanting a detox and we're recommending FMD instead?
When we think of it, because we think of this as cleaning up your intracellular components of all your body's natural detoxification pathways of your lymphatic system, your liver, and your kidneys. And we like to think that we help optimize the body and how it does those processes. So while we don't have we didn't measure things like heavy metal detoxification in our clinical trials. We are measuring things like liver output and kidney output. There are reasons from a regulatory perspective why we have to be a little careful with what we say. So, I basically think of this as a total body cleanup. So, I think it supports that. So if people want to do that on their own and you think that's a good idea to do after the diet or before or something like that, totally your prerogative. But claiming detox is not something we do yet. We think we do help 5 days of really clean, non-toxic foods that have been carefully selected from growers around the world, and many of the items we make ourselves, so we know exactly what's in them. We think it does a great job supporting that. So apologies for the soft answer there.
No, that's all right. That's okay. So basically, to start, if somebody's new to this and a patient of mine that's new to it, recommend it for at least once a month for 3 or 4 months. You said really 4 probably, because you said it takes at least that long, again, along with the coaching, they'll get a ton of acute benefits when they're on it, more sustained, the more they do it, the weight loss becomes more sustained, but then all the long-term benefits as well, at least, still under study, but long-term benefits of, again, in what I've seen, with patients that have actually done it, even just better lipid panels and blood sugar control. And then again, we're hoping for longevity as part of it, but 3 or 4 months really is what you're recommending to start, and then individualize it for the patient, depending on how they do. Okay.
It's very much a personalized thing. We've got really great studies on people with a BMI of 27. We have pretty good studies that are still being published. We're finalizing the microbiome data on for people with a BMI a little heavier than that. For the athletic population, we have some case studies. We don't have a huge amount of stuff. So a lot of it relies very much on you and your personal goals and working with your clinician around that. So, but we will have a protocol for that developed very shortly that you'll be able to look and kind of say, well, I think they fit here. So.
And then I know with fasting and water fast versus this, the big thing is, muscle wasting during it and, dehydration, but can they work out with this, or is it recommended?
We emphasize that people limit their exercise, we want you to, I tell people to treat themselves like they're fragile until they find out whether they are or are not during it. Some people go worse unexpectedly than others, and it's hard for us to predict who's going to struggle. The vast majority of people get through very, 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 very well. But yeah, limit your exercise. You don't want to get too tired, because if you create an energy deficit, if you use up too much energy, you're not bringing in any more. So you're going to get more lightheaded, maybe. You're going to be more fatigued. There's another challenge of, if you use up too much energy, your body's going to go look for it. And you create the same deficit that you would in a water fast, where all of a sudden it starts to eat muscle. So we don't want you to work out and drive your body to go eat more muscle. We don't see that. We don't have any research that happens. We just want to be careful.
Okay. Well, perfect. Well, and anything else you feel like we haven't covered at all?
So if you're going to do the diet, hydration is key, and we want you to stay active. Most people don't eat as much salt, or most people eat more salt than we have in our diet. So you're going to let go of a little bit of water, because salt helps retain water. So hydrate well, stay active, because we do want your blood vessels to do what they're normally doing. And if they go into a fasting state, they too can get a little weird. So we want to make sure people do well. So rest well, get plenty of water, stay active during it, stretching, yoga, brisk walks. Those are all encouraged. If you need to use over-the-counter medications like Aleve or Tylenol, those are all permissible as used as directed. And if you're a caffeine drinker, have your cup of coffee, but don't have more. But we don't want you going through withdrawal at the same time you're transitioning into a fast, but have your cup of coffee. It'll make your experience better. So,
okay, so they can have coffee. No cream, though.
No cream, no sweetener.
Yes.
One cup of coffee. More than that one cup, you can kick yourself out of a fast. And don't try and cheat it. It's not like, oh, they told me 1 cup, so I'm having the biggest cup ever made. Normal 8-ounce cup of coffee. Yeah, we get a lot of, it's like a giant mug, like one of those like carnival drinks, like the giant 7-Eleven thing. But no, just 8-ounce cup of coffee. We don't want you to waste all your time, effort, and money, and not get the benefits. And caffeine can kick you partially out of a fast. So, but other than that, yeah, we're here for you. If you have any questions, if you're really struggling, we can give you medical advice, but we can give education, and we can help with certain issues and talk about the diet itself. So we're here to support.
One of the things that I find is when I bring a nutritionist in, like I've had a couple nutritionists in the office, and while I think they're very, very well informed on what they do and try to help, but they're extreme and they want to do it all with cooking at home and supplements, or not even supplements, take that back, with like spices or, recipes that patients don't want to do that so much. If it comes to that, they're probably going to go on an unhealthy route. They want it a little more simple now, or laid out for them. So I think this is perfect. And the fact that you guys now have coaching with it is an awesome option for my patients.
The only active part of this is 5 days. The rest of it, you're passively letting us help you through it. So I think the only effort we need from you is the 5 days, and we'll support you even doing that. So it's, I know people are sometimes scared when they start. I promise once you start, you realize that you can do it. Most people do great. And if you do struggle a little bit the first time, each time you do it, it gets easier. And any side effects you may have experienced are less common and less severe if you do get them. So stick with it. We're here to help. Unless, obviously, disclaimer, if anybody feels unsafe, contact your clinician. And if you think stop, do so. We don't want people to put themselves in harm's way, but we want you to get through this safely and get the benefits. So
well, I think it actually might even be a good reset. Like you said, again, some of them might not be exercising, might not be energetic enough. But no matter what, if it's, make sure you get sleep, make sure you hydrate, you're going to do this for 5 days, don't do too much, but stretch, maybe get active and just walk. Then the pressure's off for them to do more. They feel better by the time they're done. And they've also gotten more sleep. They're hydrated. Now they're more energetic. So I love it. Well, perfect. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Kelley, for being on with us today. And you're very passionate about ProLon and, and all the science you guys are developing. And so I love hearing that. So thank you so much for letting our patients know. And again, anybody that's watching or listening, if you have any other questions, please just drop them in the comment, like, subscribe, share with friends, and then let us know if there's anything else that you want to talk about. And thank you for joining in today.